swapped roles. Normally he interviews me for his fantastic channel where we talk really badly. Who I've known for I don't know how many years. He's like a furniture in the crypto space. If you're not using Hackmos to audit your smart contracts, then I don't know what you're doing. And my new friend, Chad, that I just met just now.
Yes, we got to have lunch together.
We had lunch together, and in crypto, that's all it takes to become friends. We actually gathered together and we decided to change the panel title, RWA regulations. As a lawyer practicing in the space for the last 8 years, we don't really have RWA regulations per se, so we decided to talk about RWA lack of regulations and also the future of taking it forward. You know, what does it take for RWAs to stick? I wrote an article recently talking about STOs. Who remember STOs? Who's old enough to remember STOs? Did they die a peaceful death, or we have wonderful STO secondary markets? Yeah, I think they died a peaceful death, right? So why RWAs or tokenization of RWAs is back on track? Is it just a hype? Or, you know, we really have something interesting going on. So my first question to my wonderful panelists is, what is RWAs?
Real-world assets. As if the other assets that we're working with are unreal, or are from an unreal world. I think it's an unfortunate rebranding of the tokenization of things. We have cryptocurrencies, digital assets related to blockchains, which I think are packaged in their own unique way. We know some of them relate to digital gold. If you look at Bitcoin, you know that some of them are related to the security of layer 1s, layer 2s, which are cryptocurrencies in and of themselves. And then we have other stuff that has value that we manage on blockchains. And we haven't really captured a collective title for that, but we've ended up, I think through DeFi protocols, trying to have a basket of other things you can put money into, being real-world assets. And these are assets that are either in the world that we can tokenize and that have value, or they are traditional financial assets, equities, commodities, bonds, cash, that we choose to tokenize. And there's materially different use cases for both of those things, right? So financial assets for financial services and asset managers and venture capital, these things are already digital. We already have digitized these financial products. The value, as we heard in the previous panel, and we can talk more about this today, the value of tokenization in financial services opens up more opportunities for liquidity, innovation, collaboration, building new financial products and structures. That's super exciting, and extending the boundaries of financial services. The tokenization of other things in the world, real estate, trade finance, invoices, art, physical assets, are not without complexity because a lot of those assets are physical. And again, when we talked about real estate on the previous panel, the guys were saying, well, you've got regulation, you've got off-chain processes, you've got challenges with, you know, if I tokenize a Lambo, that's really exciting and very, very cool. But how do I know where the Lambo is? How do I know that Irina hasn't taken it out for a joyride and crashed it? How do I know that it's kept its service history up to date? None of these things are on chain today. And so while, yes, I could bring liquidity to my Lambo, I don't know why I'm here talking about Lambos, but anyway, here we are in Dubai talking about Lambos. These create other opportunities that are different to expanding financial services. It's about creating and driving liquidity to different industries or creating new ways of financializing things. We should also argue about why the financialization of everything is not necessarily a good thing. And that probably would be a good regulation title for next time. But ultimately, that's my opening gambit. You've got tokenization of established assets that exist in financial services, and then the tokenization of other assets in the world that have value that we would like to put on chain.
Exactly, and they're not the same, right? If you want to tokenize your watch or your car, it's not the same as tokenizing and securitizing an entire building. World asset tokenization when it comes to a regulated asset class such as shares.
Sure. Hello. Yes, we had one interesting experiment. I call it experiment. Not everybody knows, but we started we started hacking in 2017. We won one pitching competition, and the winning prize was 33 Bitcoins in exchange that we had to make an ICO. So this is how we started in 2017, and we do keep do take care of our token holders since then. Like we support our token a lot. And one idea came into my mind that we can, we had a conflict of interest between different stakeholders group, between shareholders and token holders, because they want completely different things. Shareholders want to reinvest profits and grow capitalization, while token holders want some buybacks and some token marketing. So our idea was formulated that we would like to merge the interests of both stakeholders, and we took 10% of our equity and proposed as a private placement. We tokenized this 10%, and as a private placement, we proposed to our token holders to exchange their tokens to these equity shares. Basically, it's tokenization and RWA project. So what we did, I sold 10% of my shareholding into Spanish SPV, and Spanish SPV started to hold this 10%, and we tokenized the equity of the Spanish SPV and made the private offering to our token holders. So by doing that, we merged the interest, and right now we don't have any more questions of the buybacks. People, our token holders now are those who accepted this offer. Now they are shareholders of the company, and they can influence on the decision of the strategy of the company.
And that's an interesting use case. A cybersecurity company tokenizing the shares, giving the token holders an opportunity to get the tokenized shares within the company and have a say as to the direction of the company. That's very interesting and innovative. I would question when, back in 2018, I tokenized the first corporate bond here in the Middle East, and the bond raised 800 million euros. And you know who were happy? The only people who were happy were the lawyers, because we charged fees for it, we did the structuring. The investors were not very happy because there was no secondary trading market, there was no liquidity. The people who launched, the company that launched the bond were not very happy because they had to deal with complaints from the investors and they had to pay legal fees, right? So whenever there is an innovation happening and it's in a regulated securities market or other sort of regulated areas like virtual assets, I think the only people who are quite enjoying themselves are the service providers. Unfortunately, that is the case. Chad, what is your experience with real-world assets and with the tokenizations? And what issues do you see? My issues are, lack of liquidity and, probably a high cost of regulatory barriers.
Absolutely.
What issues do you see?
You've heard the term that oil and water cannot combine. They cannot mix. And what we're finding is that this trend, which is then wanting to use DeFi applications. So it's almost like oil and half oil and water, and they just are not mixing. So we are finding different ways of doing things and protecting ourselves. I just signed an NDA for the first time in a couple years this last week. And I'm like, for what? Why are we signing an NDA? And they're like, we just need you to sign it. I'm like, okay, I'll sign it. But finding out, and I was hearing earlier from the real estate guys of, we'd like to do this, this, and this, and our platform does this, this, and this, but there's no regulation. So finding the regulation piece, getting some clarity around that, and acting as if we're doing it in the best interest that someday it'll be regulated is key.
And then I think that is the challenge, right? Countries have borders, regulations have borders, regulators have borders, blockchain has no borders. A gentleman on the panel before us talking about, swapping Dubai tokenized property to US tokenized property. That's all fantastic, but how will that work from the regulatory point of view? So Anthony, you are quite an international professional living in multiple countries. What do you see happening on the ground from the regulatory point of view? Because the only country I see that really allows native on-chain ownership is, my native Switzerland. So will we come to that point of view where other regulators will allow for that?
I think it's got to be the logical conclusion. When there's enough shouting and screaming for it, it happens. And it's not shouting and screaming from the 100,000 angry degens on Twitter, by the way. Thank you for your support and thank you for your screaming. But that's not necessarily the sort of screaming that necessarily moves markets. It's mass adoption moves markets, or the intent from BlackRock, the intent from the Swiss government, the intent from industries at large. It might not necessarily be financial services where you see the first move. It might be if you have countries that have particular strength in industries. The Dutch, for example, have spent a huge amount of time and effort building collaborations around trade, around shipping, around logistics, because that's one of their core industries. And so you see actually a very advanced logistics and supply chain industry and tokenization of trading assets in the Netherlands. You would never necessarily point to the Netherlands as a leading market, but in that particular instance, they're driving ahead. There are markets like Singapore, Hong Kong, Germany to some extent, clearly Switzerland, that are trying to be leaders in attracting capital, investment, and large projects that can position them as leading markets to bring others to. There's a battle for your projects. There's a battle for everything that people in this room are trying to build. Luckily, the UAE is in a nice position, and at the moment, many of you guys are based here, and you're enjoying decent engagement with a regulator, or decent engagement with a legal community, decent engagement with collaboration zones where you can work through the problems that have not yet been established. The pain of that is, as we heard from Riz on the previous panel, if you're going first, you're breaking down all the barriers for everybody else to enter behind you. And this is part of the challenge with Web3, is that as soon as somebody has established the protocol, somebody has established the framework, everybody else can pile in. And so have you created a moat? Possibly not. So small piece of advice to you is that if you see the regulatory barriers coming down, be very clear what it is that you're going to do, as to whether you're going to be better than everybody else or you're going to be working with everybody else. And that's the nice thing about Web3, is that actually that secondary strategy can work incredibly well because we have the requirement to engage with liquidity and customers and users across chains. The Cosmos ecosystem is particularly strong in that space. Don't hate me, I came from Polkadot before that, and I'm very fond of the idea of multi-chain assets. Working for Midnight today, we're a ZK data protection protocol. We think that being able to unlock privacy, or at least shielding transactions that are sensitive in nature, real-world asset trading is going to become a significant one of those things. Being able to enable that for multiple protocols is essential. We don't want everything going through a single protocol all the time, because different countries are going to have different requirements, different regulations are going to require different technology stacks. There's not going to be one solution fitting all. So having a multi-chain approach matters. But if you think $16 trillion of assets are going to go onto main chain EVM with no shielding of data and metadata, that's going to be an even bigger problem than regulation. Because the regulation is the obvious question, saying, oh, well, they won't let me establish an organization, or they won't let me operate on-chain without strenuous KYC. Okay, yes, we've got to solve that next. But just try bringing institutions when all of their order book is on-chain and visible for their competitors to see. Not saying that regulation isn't a problem, but privacy and data protection is going to come next, and it's an even bigger hurdle, but the unlock is even bigger once we solve it.
But ultimately, isn't it the end user's responsibility for their own institution on how they handle regulation, even if it's in a gray area?
Can be, but again, the end user has, not always, but rarely driven market change. It's the applications in the middle. What we've got nicely now is we've got a very large, $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin holdings out there in the world, unleveraged, underutilized. You've got a number of regulators and financial institutions who say, oh, this tokenization thing could be really interesting. But the conduit for those two things is applications. The application layer is always the place in which the institutions and the users meet. And until the applications are able to put together a compliant, easy to use, nice user experience, low friction platform, right? Try to move Atom across 2 bridges over to Solana and see how long that takes you and how quickly you give up.
And that was the issue with STOs, right? There was no infrastructure, there were no platforms, no secondary trading.
Yeah, the battleground is the application layer. And so it's paramount for us to enable applications to be able to have fast transactions, compliant transactions, easy user experience, custodial, non-custodial wallets if they choose to, and make it easy. Make it as easy as eToro.
There are a number of service providers that are out there that are working towards this. You know, we've talked to institutional wallets like Utilia or Fortify. You've got Bitwise doing accounting. You've got Snaps doing KYC, AML. So as far as Neptune is concerned, we're trying to surround our institutional clients with a team of professionals and hand them the path to success.
Yeah. The question at this point is, will they take primitives and build it themselves? And so you have one large institution building their own composable platform within their own environment, think JP Morgan Onyx, or actually will we just build Robinhood? And which of those is more likely to scale? We have easiest way to launch something in banking is to go and buy a bank, is not to set up your own bank, right? Because they've been through all the pain and the process and the setup and the configuration. It's going to be the same thing with DeFi. How do we get the fastest path to enabling users on board? Is it to give the banks our technology, or to build something that's like a bank that's composable and easy for people to use, that doesn't go through any of the challenges that banks may have today with their legacy infrastructure, but that is still compliant on the same side?
But that's a great point that you're making, Chad, that you need this ecosystem of service providers, an accountant, a bookkeeper, AML, KYC, sort of easy onboarding, because you cannot build in our Web3 space something by yourself. You need a team of professionals around you. And Anthony, you talked about the regulators and you mentioned UIE. One of the things I really like you mentioned, it's quite easy to engage with the regulators here. And I think, Dyma, you are seeing it firsthand with you being a preferred service provider with quite a few regulators in the UAE. Believe it or not, we are a country of less than 10 million people, and we have 5 crypto regulators in the UAE. So we have federal, ESCA, and central bank. Then we have local one in Dubai, VARA, Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority. Then we have DIFC and IDGM regulator. So talk to us about the 17 years I'm screaming at all my friends, Habibi, come to Dubai. Finally, you're all coming. I'm very, very happy. Welcome. And so you've just relocated to the UAE, and you are preferred services provider with regulators. Talk about that experience and how is it engaging with community here?
I recently moved to Abu Dhabi, and my wife is happy, everybody's happy, and so it's great to be here. For us, it's like we are very big believers in crypto, like our company, and we want our industry to succeed. And talking to regulators and educating regulators is one of the key strategic initiatives. So we participated in European Commission sandbox. European Commission is our client. We work closely with ADGM. Like, this is the reason why I moved to Abu Dhabi, because we work very closely with them. We helped Bahrain to set up the regulation, obviously VARA, Turkish regulator. So all of them have like one, I wouldn't say problem, but one similarity. All of them, they are very big professionals. They want also crypto to succeed, but this is not their full-time job. They don't know crypto that much as we do, like like the industry. And they were building some other regulation for like previous hot topics, and this is data protection, this KYC, AML, and they. Some of them, they still think that this is the most risky area in crypto and we need to rebuild it once again. But in fact, they just need help to point finger where are the really biggest risks. So yeah, we explain to regulators where they should create new laws, where they should focus on, that will help to make the fraudsters, hackers, and scammers' life more difficult, and where they should remove some parts that are not that important. Yeah. So, for example, I think in I think Emirates regulators, they're moving with the best speed, they are risk takers, and they are ready to experiment for the best of the industry.
Yeah, and living in a small, agile country with regulators actually working for the betterment and for the economy of the country, it's such a good change. If you see what's happening in Europe, they just want to argue and fight, and and here we don't have the pleasure of wasting time. We need to actually move the economy forward, and that's what I absolutely love Dubai about, living here for 17 years.
In the defense of Europe, we don't argue and fight, we just write a lot of papers.
Papers, yes, sorry, writing papers. I really love the AI Act. There's 0 AI companies in Europe, but there is the first AI law in Europe, and some lawyers charged a lot of money for that, and that's what I keep saying, right? Every time you produce bureaucracy and the paperwork, the only people are winning lawyers. And as a full-time lawyer, I'm happy to bash lawyers.
We need to tokenize lawyers.
That would be a very useless exercise. But I agree, working with regulators here in UAE, it's absolutely, you actually send an email, you actually get a response, you get on a phone.
Yeah, but I want to also underline what is our vision on the regulators. So it's no chance that they are going to that they can create the perfect environment. It's just impossible. The responsibility on our industry lies only on us, on builders, and regulators. They are just tools in our hands to build a proper industry. So, and I think everybody should judge them in this way. That's a responsibility on us. Regulators are tools. We have to help them, and only our responsibility in the end.
That's one way of looking at it. Chad, talking about fantastic regulators, there's President Trump, incoming, promised to make US the crypto capital of the world, the Bitcoin capital of the world. He launched his DeFi coin, which did not perform very well. What is happening in the US? Here we are, sitting in the UAE, telling how wonderful and fantastic things are, how everything is rosy, and we have the best government and the best regulators and the best ecosystem. How are things in the US?
Well, you never can believe a politician. And especially when they're trying to use it to gain votes and when they are trying to use it to sway the public opinion. However, with Trump, I actually really believe him because he is on the DeFi aspect of the platform. So I'm encouraged. I'm looking forward to here in a couple of weeks, maybe having some different regulators in the US, and we could probably do another panel at that time.
Not political advice, always do your own research.
Not political advice. There was a Friday prayer this last Friday, and the lady next to me prayed for the health of President Trump. Why? I overheard it, and I actually thought it was cute, but I think maybe we all need prayers for the crypto industry and for
Amen.
the peace and health of everyone. But give me more. What's happening in the US with regards to real-world assets, with regards to, okay, fantastic, so there are a lot of regulated platforms. What else is coming out interesting?
Yeah, so what is interesting in the US is that the retail environment, just the regular Joe that wants to get into crypto, it has this fog over them and there's no real clear path. But when you start getting into the institutions and the accredited investors, then all of a sudden there is a little bit of clarity and regulation and they know exactly what to do. But they just don't always know if they should do it. And I always say there's three types of people. There's the people that play the game, there's the people that watch the game, and there's the people that don't even know the game's going on. And so what I am constantly encouraging and promoting in the US is at least start watching the game, and if not, start playing. And if you don't quite know the rules and the regulations of what you're playing, learn it as you go.
I think that's fantastic, and I'm so glad to be seeing so many people moving to Dubai who are actually playing the game, not watching. They're actually, they're actually active in the game. We have a few minutes left. Anthony, your last thoughts on RWA regulations, and you take it wherever you want to go.
Thank you. So I think we're all here for mass adoption broadly, right? Blockchain technology doesn't have any divine right to succeed. it's not going to get adopted because it's the future. It's going to get adopted because it has a meaningful impact on the ability to create value, to rewire financial systems, to create new business models, state of affairs that so much of the anticipated future or bullishness of our industry or industry that uses our technologies depends on a regulation in one country in the world. You know, the US election, yes, it will have a bearing on the sentiment around digital assets in a large country, but look at the audience here, look at the builders in the UAE, look at the builders in Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, Latin America. There are projects all over the world that are performing incredibly well, that are viable, that have customers, that can be based in jurisdictions that have regulatory clarity. There's plenty of places to play. So to Chad's point, keep playing the game and go and find a place where you do have a support network and ecosystem and an opportunity to play. Because if it doesn't work where you are, move. The nice thing about Web3 is that it's remote. You have projects that can support each other in all sorts of different jurisdictions. In my view, controversial opinion, regulation is not the barrier to adoption. The product is the barrier to adoption. Do we have a product that can be consumed by the user group that you're targeting? It may be retail crypto holders, right? And that's still a relatively nascent audience. It may be large institutions. And so what are you building that large institutions can actually consume? Do they want a white label they can brand themselves, or they want to consume your service and plug it in? Right? Until we understand how we actually deliver digital transformation into the groups, the industries, and the customer bases that we're looking at, regulation's irrelevant until we've actually got a product that can scale. And so it's important to make sure that we keep an eye on that. The second and final point I will make is that please do not underestimate. There are 100,000 or however many angry degens on Twitter today that have risk accepted that everything on Ethereum today is transparent, visible. It may be encrypted, but in the world of AI and quantum, encrypted things on a blockchain are on the blockchain forever, but they may not be encrypted forever. And so having encrypted digital asset transactions at scale, en masse, and growing on-chain is going to be unpalatable to some and ridiculous to most. And so as you're working through these particular solutions, please have a think about how do we create compliant data protection or privacy for financial transactions or digital asset transactions or real-world asset transactions on-chain. Because if we're not allowing people to be at least shielded, private in terms of how do they operate, or how do those transactions go through, there is a compliance requirement for selective disclosure or to be able to disclose transactions if a regulator requires. That's great. But JP Morgan is not going to open their order book and put it out on Ethereum, any more than you guys would put your website browser history on Ethereum either. And so as you're thinking about it, the space of zero knowledge proofs, zero knowledge smart contracts is incredibly strong right now. About 16% of all building activity in Web3 is ZK. And shameless plug, but from a Midnight perspective, we'd love to talk to anybody who's building, who has an interest in this space, even just to share ideas.
Thank you very much. That was great. Dyma, what say you?
Well, I definitely think that RWA should be regulated because it's quite risky to let it go, you know, like for community to create new class of assets that is liquid and that can scale to trillion industry. Like obviously it creates a lot of inflation risks. So, but I don't see how this regulation can be at the global scale. So probably it needs to be all localized. So, but generally, yeah, I mean, I'm very bullish on RWA and a lot of different stuff and
everything. Tokenize everything.
Yes.
yeah.
And I know you're a Bitcoin bull. You are a Bitcoin bull, and can you stop Bitcoin? And that's, I guess, my closing remarks to the regulators. If you're out there, you can't stop Bitcoin. You can't stop tokenization. You can't stop crypto. You just have to work with it and make it to what makes sense for everybody. And the train has left the station, so jump on.
China has tried to ban Bitcoin how many times? You know, they're not doing very well. So I think banning technology is never going to work. And unfortunately, the US is trying to do that. They are putting in prison the developers of a technology, which I just think absolutely shocking. My last thoughts are as follows. If anybody were to crack RWA regulations, that would be the regulator here in the UAE. Why? Because the talent is coming here. The capital is coming here. You are all here. Previous panel mentioned golden visa for properties. There are now golden visas for Web3 talent. I received a Web3 talent golden visa. My colleague Dyma received Web3 talent golden visa. So if you're talented and if you're Web3, come and talk to us. We'll make sure the UAE government relocates you here, because this is what they want. They want the smartest people working on the most difficult issues in order to create prosperity and move the technology forward. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.